I'm sorry, I had to walk out. Mrs. Moore, did you get your question answered?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so tonight, in terms of best academic practice schools for Black students, I wanted to make sure tonight what I'm going to look at something slightly different, same thing, but slightly different, and to make sure that we're looking at how our story and how our narrative can take place over a period of this 12 months that we're going to be moving rather quickly through this sprint. So the for the benefit of those who are going to be reviewing this, we want to make sure that they understand what we're trying to do. And within best academic practice models for Black students, there's several discussions that take place. One of the things that I've heard before, and I'm going to try and address it tonight um, when as we get started. So for those of you who are tuning in to this particular recording, my name is Jim Ahmad Dogon McWilson. I am with the Family Empowerment Student Achievement Institute, which is a part of the Best Academic Practice Models for Black Students national campaign. And we are attempting to bring schools that fall within all of the categories from poor to middle class to upper class. I don't think we have any no class schools, but for the ones where our children are doing well. In our research, some of the schools, when you look at a school, so long as they have enough students to be counted and reported, we want to look at those schools. So it's not how many, it's how many are in the school and being tested so that we can get a look at which schools are doing what. And you'll be able to find that data as we will show you tonight. So I'm going to get started here. And the first school that I'm going to go to is Beachwood. Beachwood High School is within the Ohio school districts. Um, this is a high school that's rated overall 4.5, and there's a reason that they didn't score 5.5 across the board. But in the area that we look at first, which is the detail and the calculations of how they look at what percent of students are actually proficient um, overall. So as you can see in this particular categories, there is advanced plus, advanced, accomplished, proficient. Everything is measured from proficient up. If you look at this the way you look at a regular report card, the bottom would be limited, which would be an F. Basic would be a D. Proficient would be C. Accomplished would be a B, and A would be advanced would be an A, and A plus would be advanced plus. If you look at that in that way, you can then relate to the report card that your child brings home for those grades that give report cards. But you can also ask your teacher, if it's in elementary school, what is the equivalent of the report card that your elementary student um, brings home? It's nice to be able to quantify as well as qualify what is being sent home. So if you always put it in categories of what happened when you went to school and your teacher gave you a grade, normally it was A, B, C, D, F. So that's very important to us. What's nice about this particular school is more than 90% of these students are 88 so percent of these students on all tests, not just reading and math, but on all tests. You find that information here under performance index here, and it states clearly that the performance index measured the test results of every student. And that's very important. So all students in the entire school that took all the tests that were given by the state scored proficient or above in terms of the test that was given. Now, those things are broken out in a different category. That category is gap closing, which gives you a chance to look at the demographics of the school. And in terms of the demographics of the school, in terms of what the benchmarks are, the state of Ohio uses benchmarks, which is their expectation of where they think certain students should be. And you really, if you're in the state of Ohio, you should look into it. If you're in a different state, you should be able to compare and contrast your state with the state where we started the process. As you can see here, our focus is on Black students here, and they're at 97% of them met the benchmark. But in the state of Ohio, you have to know what was the benchmark that was set for them to meet. And that particular benchmark that was set for them to meet was 61.9. So what this is telling you is that the benchmark that was set for Black African descendant students was met by, quote, 97% of the students. Now, what's important is if you look at the benchmark they set for white students, they 106% made that benchmark. But you want to note that benchmark was 86.7. The reason that's important is because really what it says to you is in the state of Ohio, they have higher expectations in setting their benchmarks for Black students. You want to be aware of that because roughly that's a 20% difference in what they say is a benchmark, but that benchmark is an expectation based on their statistical analysis and the models they use. I don't want to make it complicated, but the difference is the difference. There's a higher expectation benchmark set for white students. Now, when they tell you that that's because Black students have been behind, they're trying to get additional resources, it really doesn't have anything to do with that. It really has to do with the original Constitution of the state of Ohio. And in that Constitution, white male supremacy was codified in Article 4, Section 1. And once the state was formed in 1804, they set Black codes as to what Black people could do in the state of Ohio. In 1807, they wrote additional laws, and Black children were not allowed to enter government public funded schools in Ohio until well after 1831. They did go to a public school in 1831, but that's because a family of Quakers by the name of Harveys are in Harveysburg set up a school and said all kids could come. But that was not the government tax funded school. So even though Black people were working and paying taxes during that time, their taxes did not go for a public school that they could go to. So being behind is not an excuse. What the state should be doing is compensating for having them behind in the first place. That is the discussion that a task force did have through the NAACP with the state. And given the fact that we had that discussion, and I'm bringing that up now because we're now in 2026, and they're banning books by and about Black people. They are erasing the history of Black people. They are removing the stigma that has been put on white people for doing Black people wrong by saying race doesn't matter. And it truly does matter, which is why I bring up the issue that you want to look at the beginning history of the state according to its constitution. And that would be in 1803. Article 4, Section 1. So for those of you that may be interested in history, so you have foundation, specifically if you are advocating for. So when you get into conversations and people say, well, there is no more discrimination, white wasn't removed from the Ohio Constitution for 100 years. They put it in there in 1803. They did not remove it until the 19th Amendment was passed 100 years later. So I bring that up for that reason. So these are the benchmarks for English language arts, which is different than underachievement, which is for all tests. This is specifically for reading English language arts. So when you see English language arts, you're really thinking reading and all the things that go with reading. Mathematics is the same thing. Our kids are doing quite well and they exceeded the benchmark. But I want you to be aware of what the benchmark is. That's very important. And we may get back to discuss this. I want to compare this now and give you an idea of the funding in this particular school, because that's going to play a part, and then we'll go to who goes to the school. The funding in this school is at $20,000, $20,262 of spending per pupil. Now they're spending approximately $13,000 in the classroom. So basically, if I was going to look at this school again and look at its overall score, I would expect this to be a 5 across the board. It is not. However, what's important in the beginning is to understand that close to 90% of these kids are passing all the tests. Now, what I'd like to do with this is show you who goes to the schools. So you have some idea of the number of kids that are going to the school and what percentage these kids are. Our particular focus is on Black students. The Black non-Hispanic is a government classification. Black African descendant students, which you will hear us use, is in all of those particular people, regardless of where they are in the world, that are descendants of Blacks from the continent of Africa. So there's no such thing as a Hispanic world where there are Black people that those Black people didn't descend from originally the continent that is now called Africa. So this is a government tool just to clear this up. The same thing as you see at the bottom, it says white non-Hispanic. Well, just to say, here's an example. If a person born in Sweden, male or female, that comes to Mexico and marries a Mexican male or female, that white person immediately becomes an Hispanic by law in the state of the United States. So it isn't all that it seems, but this is the game that's played by race, and then it's played by ethnicity, and then it's played by the politics of how the Office of Management and Budget of the United States government chooses to modify and classify people. Our focus, if they're Black and they accept that, they classify themselves as that, then that's what we're looking at. In this particular school, out of 538 students, under all students, the 125 are Black, and that's 23.3%. So we're going to cover that part of the report card What you do want to do, and I'm going to come back to this in a minute, is when you look at the report cards, you want to start with the overall ratings. And that's what this is. You also get rated in growth, what they call growth, which would be progress. We're not going to go through this in depth because we want to know what did they actually achieve on every test given during the course of the year. If you get caught up in growth, then it's not achievement. Either you passed the test or you didn't. Now, if you grew from one year to the next, that's different. When you get your report card, the question is, did you get an A, B, C, D, or an F? That's the first thing, because that tells you the level of achievement per the instructor, teacher, educator, whoever is given the test. That's very important. So we're not going to get caught up in progress, and we're not going to get caught up in graduation, which they have a 5-star rating in graduation. The 5-star graduation just in the future, and we will cover this, and you will see some of those coming up. The question in graduation is what percent of the students were qualified to graduate? Because you can qualify to graduate with a D minus or a D plus. So we want to stay within the ABC category of proficient or above. That's our criteria. So, and there are other areas, whether they're college and career, workforce, and military readiness. Here's the reason why they were at 4.5. Number one, they scored 3 out of 5 on college and career ready, and they scored 4 on the progress. But again, we're dealing with absolute numbers. What was achieved? This is at Beachwood High School, and this is in the state of Ohio. If you look at the screen, there's a phone number that you can call if you're interested in how to compare your school with this school. You can also Google the Ohio Department of Education report cards. If you're a parent, click on the parent, and you can also get there. But in any case, just go to Ohio Department of Education report cards, look up your particular school where your child attends school, wherever that may be in the state of Ohio. Now, here again, I want to bring your attention to this is Beachwood High School, and I'm going to go back to a different number. I'm going to go back to financial support. As you notice here, operating spending per pupil is $20,000. So keep this number in mind. I'm going to go to a different school. I'm going to start with finance and go backwards and then end up in the same place. This particular school is Walnut Hills. It's in Cincinnati, Ohio. But look at the fact that the operating spending per pupil is $15,164. Why is that important? That's important because if you look at their particular achievement, they had 5 stars out of 5. If you look at their home report card, they have 5 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, and 4 stars. So the difference in the 0.5 is they picked up because of the extra star. That's how they got to a 5-star. But the important piece for us looking at these is start following the money first after you've looked at achievement. Because even though this school, Beachwood, is spending $5,000 more, they are performing lower than this school, Walnut Hills, which is producing at a 5-star level. So you have a 4.5 star school in terms of Beachwood and its home number here, 4.5 out of 5. You have Walnut Hills and its overall score is a 5. So I'm only bringing up these two schools tonight to extend this a little bit as a comparison between these two, because people make a big deal about the money. Money is important for any business to operate, in schools, whether they like it or not. They are a business. They deal with the IRS. They have to file documents. Money is allocated. It comes from your tax dollars. And so from a business standpoint, if you're going to receive more money, you should be doing better. Now, I'm going to come back to both these schools and look at both of these schools and add a school. And the reason I want to do that is because, again, I want to emphasize the money, $15,164. I want to go back to this school and the money and its financial data, 20,000. Now, I want you to think about those numbers. So if I go in here and I put East High School in Youngstown, Ohio, they're 2.5 point school. They received 2 stars in achievement. Roughly 70% of their students are below proficient. 43% are at an F level, 29+% are at a D level. So you have 75% to 76% below. But when you look at the financial data on that same school, they're spending $15,637. So if you look at 15,637 and you look at 15,164, you say, okay, so what's the difference here? Why is there a problem? What can we look at? Well, what you can do is go under detail in the school and you look at for economically disadvantaged. This particular school, Walnut Hills, only has 25% economically disadvantaged in the school. That can make a difference. But if you back into the very nature of what we were speaking of before, and you put East in this school, in terms of a high school, what you find out on the detail is that this school is 100%, 99.8% disadvantaged, poor, underfunded, according to the numbers. So the numbers get to be important after you look at achievement. So you have a school that's at 15,000, that's a 5-star school, but it has a lower number of poor kids in the school, which means the kids have a higher advantage. But by the same token, you can take this same school and put in a school that is also 100% poverty, which would be Steubenville High School. It's not East is 2.5. Steubenville is a 4.0 in terms of stars overall. Their data point in terms of the number of students performing, 80% of their students are proficient or above. So what's the number in financial data? that school is receiving the
mm,
lowest amount of money than either of the three of the schools. Okay, so let's look at how did they do in gap closing in terms of our kids specifically meeting and exceeding. Wow, 85% of the Black kids achieve the benchmark and above. So numbers count, which is why we're using data. You have to use the data and let achievement drive how you look at the data. And then let the money, when you look at the money part in terms back here, they're receiving close to 7,500 less than the $20,000 school, and yet they're scoring in the same range. And that's kind of the
mm,
buttress of this. So again, I want to make it
mm,
real clear what we're looking at is we're looking at
mm,
achievement. And under achievement, what we're looking at is what percentage of the students um, are passing all tests in this particular school, Steubenville High School. 80% are achieving proficient or above, and they're doing it at approximately $11,000. If you look here at East High School, 70% are below, and they're doing it at 15,000. They have more money than the 11,000. Both of them are 100% poverty school, but this particular school is receiving $4,000 more, and so they're doing less with more. And this all makes a difference when you are trying to figure out for your school in your home, um, what does all this look like? And it's important to be able to look at a school like
mm, mm,
Walnut Hill, which is spending the same
mm,
amount of money, roughly $15,000, has less disadvantaged kids, but are performing at a higher level. They're a five-star school. So there's something to be said about how much money you receive. But the most important thing is what do you do with the money? What's the quality of the educators? How much of the money is used to support the children?
mm,
And how many barriers are removed
mm,
from the educators and other adults that are trying to help the children? So again, I'm going through these as a comparison because I want it to be a little bit more than just a school.
mm,
You'll see plenty of schools where we go through just one school, but because of the concern about the Department of Education being disbanded, this or the attempt is to disband it. They haven't disbanded it, but they have gutted the number of people. The money that was coming through the states are coming to the states. It may be less, but
mm,
more than 90% of the money in most states come from the
mm,
state anyway, which is why they make the law. They also set the benchmarks for the tests. They also send the standards to each of your local districts. So if you're in a local district and the local district tells you they set their own curriculum in the state of Ohio, that would be correct. But the state standards are set by the state, and the state expects the local school board
mm,
to ensure that those standards are included
mm,
in their regular program.
mm,
So if we make sure that we're you're on top of that in terms of um, what's going on and how it's going on, it will make a difference. So again, to recap, um, we want to talk about achievement. We want to talk about overall score in the state of Ohio. It's 1 star to 5 stars. Anytime you hit a 5 star, especially in achievement, the big thing in achievement is this is all tests for all students. When you calculate the score, They have multiple categories. Those categories are limited, F, basic, B, and that makes it easy for all of us to understand. P, proficient, accomplished would be a B, and A would be advanced, and advanced plus would be an A plus. So right off the bat for all the students, that's important. The purpose of best academic practice models for Black students is to find our students, look on the gap closing, and look at the disaggregation of data. And these bar graphs are by various groups within the school. Here you can see Black students 107% of the benchmark that was set. So they're doing extremely well on what they're presented with. But I'd like for you to remember one thing before we close. If I have a low expectation, which translates into a low benchmark, a low benchmark is a low benchmark. And a high percentage of the student meeting the low benchmark still keeps our students behind. And in Ohio specifically, we describe that as academic segregation by benchmark in integrated school. So it's no longer important that you're in an integrated school. The question is, what are the benchmarks? What are the expectations? What are the supports? What are the barrier removers? What's the quality of the teachers? That's where it starts. And if you get that right, then what you get is a 5-star on gap closing, and you get a 5-star on achievement. That's the answer. You can deal with everything else. You can deal with wraparound services, you can deal with discipline, you can deal with attendance, you can deal with mobility, you can deal with all those things if the majority of the children are achieving on all tests, and specifically in reading, English language arts, and math at the level that this 5-star school is. Now, any of the team members that are on, if you would unmute if you have a question. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Darla, so that I'm going to leave Walnut Hills up as the particular school that we're looking at. And again, this is Best Academic Practice Models for Black Students campaign. We're looking to, over the next 12 months, identify 1,001 achieving schools and or districts nationwide. So if you have a recommendation, you can actually email us at bestacademicpractice.models@gmail.com. And very important that you participate with us, work with us, or work within in your particular school. But again, you can email us also at Achievement Matters. That's 3 A's, AAA for African American Achievement. And you can call the number on the screen as well. Again, the school, the 5-star school that we're looking at is Walnut Hills. A different school at the opposite end, but they're all comparison because they all get money. They all have staff. So remember, our goal is to get as many schools at 5 stars, 4 stars, and 3 stars as possible. That's the goal, because that shows where the majority of the children are. Okay. Any team members have any questions? President Nicholas, any question? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Darla.
No, I think I'm good.
Very good. All right, I'm looking forward to you tomorrow night.
All right.
Dr. Weezy, you have a comment before we leave, or Darla? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. There comes a point where you must decide that enough is enough. Stand your ground, speak your truth, and refuse to let anyone mistreat you. Throughout life, there will be people who dismiss you, disrespect you, or try to tear you down for reasons that have nothing to do with you. Do not waste your energy trying to change them or earn their approval. Do not give hate a place in your heart either. You cannot control what others think or say, but you can control how much of it you allow inside. Leave them with their judgments. Let the right people love you for who you truly are, and if others walk away, let them. Their misunderstanding does not define you, and their rejection does not lessen your worth.
Great.
Empaths, old souls, and introverts.
Oh, thank
All
you.
right.
You always deliver.
Ashe.
All right.
All
I
right.
think we all need to hear that every now and then.
You're absolutely correct. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Amen.
night.